Alright, welcome back to Roguetech, and welcome back to your first playthrough. So, here we are, still in the first shooting round of the first mission. At least we destroyed one enemy. And now, since we destroyed the primary target that I picked out, the Razorback with the PPC and laser setup, we need to decide who to shoot next. And this is the point where we have the target of opportunity, which is the target that is closest to us and is going to be the easiest to start targeting, which we actually have really good sensor information on. Is that just our sensor roll was really good, or no? Yeah, maybe it's also the VTOLs. I don't know, but we have perfect information. Well, actually no, I stand corrected. We have almost perfect information. You'll notice the one thing missing from the heads-up display here is the type of Mechwarrior or pilot that is controlling it, which means we're just shy of a perfect sensor check. And yeah, we have 3 potential targets. The Drillson has a Toronto large laser, some SRM-2, and a machine gun that's functional. Also has 9 evasion, 510 armor, 125 structure. The ultralight Mars carrier has the Mars rocket. We don't know how much evasion because we have a slightly less information on it, so we don't know exactly how much evasion it has. Unless it actually has none. There's a chance it has none. Not sure. Did it just not move this round? It might have not moved. And if it didn't move, then it has no evasion, which makes it a very prime target, especially since it only has 240 armor and 50 structure total across the entire vehicle. So if we can deal 60 damage to the side or 60 damage to the front, we will destroy it and the Mars will be off the battlefield. Worth noting, in case you aren't familiar, a Mars is a primitive Thunderbolt. Just like the large laser Tronal is a less effective large laser. It's not quite as low tech as a Chem laser, but it is less effective than a standard intersphere large laser. And then we have the Locust, whose SRMs are destroyed, and its medium laser, I was wrong, it's not a small laser, it's a medium laser. Its medium laser is still functional. If I remember correctly, and actually looking at the model, yep, looks like the medium laser is in the center torso, and the SRMs were on the arms, most likely. And possibly, no, hold on. It's a Locust, what am I talking about? The arms are shield arms. The side torso is where the SRM-2s were. Which means, until we destroy the center torso, the Locust is still going to have its medium laser. It also has 11 evasion, so even though it's the target of priority that's closest to us, I think the Mars is definitely our primary focus at this point. Now, when we consider the breakpoints, if our Locust hits both medium lasers on a single location, it will be open, and the machine guns might be able to finish the job. But it is not a guaranteed kill even if everything hits. So, we would have to have 5 out of the 12 possible machine gun rounds hit the same location as both medium lasers to kill the ultralight Mars carrier. We do still have the Chaucer left. The Chaucer has an AC-10. And if we back out completely and we click on the Chaucer, you can left click on a unit that's not currently active, either the unit itself or the portrait, to look at a different unit of yours. And you can see the AC-10 does 60 damage. Vehicles can't be braced, so there's very likely to be no actual damage reduction on the Mars carrier. So if we land that AC-10 shot, the Mars carrier is guaranteed to die, no matter where we hit. So I think we're definitely going to have the Shellster shoot at the Mars carrier, which leaves the Drillson, which is actually the hardest target here, has the most armor and structure of any at any given location, or the already damaged Locust. Now, worth noting, even though the Locust is just a medium laser, one benefit to destroying the Locust would be that all of our allies would then target something else. So I think we are actually going to use Rusalka to try to possibly get some damage on the Locust. There's also the chance that we might crit a leg actuator, or plus it's our Locust. It's not exactly the most impactful shot that we have. So, oh, this is a thing that I completely failed to mention: the firing arc. You'll see the brighter section of the firing arc, and then the less bright section, and then the less bright, and finally the section that isn't lit up at all. That's showing your weapon range. So the medium lasers can fire at max range to the edge of what is lit up there. That is the absolute extent of our Locust's range, just period. Which you can see, max range 360 meters. So, in case you weren't aware, whenever you see a meters anything in Roguetech, that doesn't necessarily translate directly to hexes. Especially when you're considering speed of a mech, since there's so many variables that come into play with elevation changes, what type of terrain you're running over, etc., etc. However, the weapon ranges are absolute, so as long as you have line of sight, you will always be able to fire the same number of hexes for the same range bracket. And you can't really see the hexes unless you currently can move through them, because each of those pips is the center of a hex. But you can kind of ballpark it based on how far apart the pips always are. So you can see this brightest portion. The brightest portion is the portion the machine guns can fire at max range, so 240 meters. Which is also the medium range of the, well, the medium or short range of the medium lasers. So you can kind of see it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hexes-ish. And the reason I say roughly is because while the hexes have an absolute size, the distance between the edges of 2 hexes and the center of 2 hexes and the center of 1 hex to the edge of another hex is a lot of math. So it doesn't usually come up that much, the specifics of exactly where in a hex you're firing from to where you're moving through. Now then, also rounding can be weird sometimes. Especially in Roguetech, because any rounding they do outside of the original Battletech functions and the original Battletech coding is then translated into the original Battletech's entire system level code and functionality. So sometimes rounding can be odd, and I'll just leave it at that. But we are definitely going to shoot the Locust. And you can see it says 5% hit chance from way over here. But once we actually commit to the move, wherever we move to, you'll notice that that updates. Now, we can move to this hex and have the Locust within that particular firing arc. Okay, so future me is going to have a field day with this one, but 30 meters... 25 to 30 meters is roughly a hex. This brightest area is medium to short range for it's roughly 5. It's roughly 4 or 5 hexes, and it is the medium to short range on the machine guns and medium lasers. This arc over here is the point the machine guns can shoot to at max range. Also, the brightness of the arc is showing how many of your weapon systems can fire at each bracket. So that's why it's so dim way out here where only medium lasers can shoot. If all of your weapons have the same range, it will drop from one of the brighter colors to straight up not having any kind of highlight. But yeah, it shows you what portion of your weapons can fire at any given range and what kind of accuracy they're going to have. That's why this this inner arc is so much brighter than the outermost arc, is because not only can everything fire, but everything can fire with higher hit chances. Yeah. So that's some editing. That's some editing. Yeah. In any case, so back to the actual decision at hand of we want to shoot the Locust with our Locust just because it's the most impactful target we can shoot at. And we definitely want to be within the inner circle. The consideration here is just, are we sacrificing anything to shoot within the inner circle? For example, if we were able to shoot him in the back, or if shooting with the inner circle required us to be in front of the mech, then that would be a consideration that is much more noteworthy. Here, the only consideration is what our facing is going to be. And no matter... camera. So no matter what hex we go into, we can position ourselves where our back is not going to be to the Mars carrier or the Drillson. It actually does not matter at all which of these hexes we are positioning in. Now, this closer up hex, while it's definitely not going to be within short range of the machine guns, we might barely be in short range of the medium lasers. Again, probably not. Kind of comes down to the way that hexes work, but this should be about the 4th hex away from one Locust to the other, which, again, 25 to 30 meters is unlikely to be within the 90 meters for short range on the medium laser, or short range on the or short range on the machine gun. Actually, I just noticed the machine gun is listing the same range as the medium laser when it comes to medium and short. That's inaccurate, I believe. Because I'm fairly certain that short range on the machine guns should be 60 meters. Huh. Interesting. In any case, all that out of the way, we're just going to move forward. We're going to run over some rough terrain to get there. I should have actually considered if pathing to a different hex would not go over the rough terrain, but it's fine. And then with that, we're going to target the Locust. We do have the 11 evasion we're dealing with, and we do have the penalty from sprinting. Also, weapon accuracy +1 difficulty to hit. Right, because Rusalka is cautious. So it's not actually weapon accuracy there. It's not the weapon at all. It's Rusalka's being cautious. That's causing that extra +1 difficulty. So even with sensors, we have almost 20, or just below 20% chance to hit. You will remember it was not 20% before we moved, because it was calculating things from the hex we were in, not the hex we were moving to. With all that said and done, we are going to now fire on the Locust. And I'm not even going to kick the machine guns up to ×6, because at ×3, you can see over on the left, the big full pop-up tooltip for the weapon system, which, yes, I intentionally ignored till now, because This is the point where it's really relevant whenever you're firing the machine guns. So you can see the machine guns have +10 accuracy against battle armor and protomechs. Cool. Bonus damage against protomechs and battle armor. Cool. But the most important thing we're looking at here, since we're not firing on them, is it has +1 recoil per shot above 3 with a base recoil of 0, and 10% jam chance per shot above 3 with a base jam chance of 0. So as long as you're firing the machine gun at ×3, you have no recoil, you have no jam chance. And then if you want to fire it maxed out, like we did with the Phoenix Hawk, it's going to have a recoil of 3 and a 30% jam chance. So since we're unlikely to destroy the Locust either way, we're just going to fire at ×3. Because the extra potential 6 damage per machine gun is, in this particular situation, with the fact that the Locust has nothing but a medium laser and 11 evasion, I would rather definitely have the machine guns ready to fire again next round than potentially have the recoil and jam preventing them from firing when it might be a more impactful shot. So, with all that said and done, there's the Locust getting hit by 2 machine gun rounds. However, you would see, or you may have seen, the box that popped up said unsettled. So, whenever an enemy is unsettled, well, first of all, even though just a couple machine gun rounds hit, the panic check that is made when you take fire, whenever you're hit by enemy attacks, one of the factors that goes into what the difficulty for the guts check to see if you start building up panic is the percentage of damage done. So if you're walking around in an Atlas and you get hit by a 2 damage machine gun round, if it's just a hit on the arm or leg or whatever, the panic roll is going to be negligible. But if you're in a Locust that has 15 armor in any given location, even just an impact from a 2 damage machine gun round is enough to trigger a panic check you might fail. And I don't know what kind of Mechwarrior is in the Locust, but since this is a 1-skull mission, it's probably a rookie of some kind of green Mechwarrior. So his guts is likely to be 3 or less. Which means he failed his panic check from taking 4 damage total. Now, what's the significance of being unsettled? First off, it's one step closer to the worst panic levels that start really messing with you. But immediately in and of itself, unsettled is just a penalty of 1 to hit. So he is now less accurate because we hit him with 2 machine gun rounds and he failed his panic check. So yeah, we'll go over panic more once it comes in, I think, more to matter more. But yeah, the main things that panic does is increased difficulty whenever you're shooting and reduced difficulty for enemies to shoot you as you go up the different panic levels. So at unsettled, it's a 0 bonus to hitting them and a 1 penalty to them shooting. Now then, let's finish things off with Tainted Loki in the obstructed shot on the Mars carrier. Okay, so I'm gonna say that the shot on the Locust was worth it because we did get the panic success, but now that I'm seeing that it's obstructed only to the Mars carrier, I regret not having the Locust to be able to follow up. So one thing that an obstructed shot does is reduced damage. Now, obviously, I would prefer to shoot him in the side over shooting him from the front. So that basically leaves this handful of hexes here. Yeah, basically this cluster of like 5 hexes. And just to confirm, there is not a single spot that... Nope. Not a single spot with unobstructed line of sight. So, I'm actually going to without much consideration at all, I'm going to go up on the ridge a little bit right here to shoot the Mars carrier. So one reason is because we have obstructed line of sight everywhere, so it doesn't really matter as far as targeting goes. But this does give us a slight amount of elevation. So that might increase our hit chance by 1, or reduce the difficulty to hit by 1 compared to one of the lower elevation hexes. And the main downside to this particular hex would be the rough terrain that we're running over, but tanks aren't impacted by rough terrain aside from just their mobility being reduced. So, yeah, we're definitely going to commit to that. And then we're going to look at the Mars carrier with obstructed line of sight, and we're going to see that, yes, our AC-10, instead of doing the 60 damage that would have been a guaranteed kill if it hit anywhere, is now only 54 damage. Which is very unfortunate. And then our machine gun can do at most 6 damage. If all the shots hit the same location as the AC-10, it could potentially be a one-shot kill. But since that is incredibly unlikely, and again, I'd rather have it next round than roll and see if we can get all 6 shots to hit the same place as the AC-10, if the AC-10 even hits, I'm just going to take the shot and worry about destroying the Mars carrier next round. So, yeah, we missed anyway. 1 damage! Early game. That's a thing. Also, I think we had no sensors. I should have absolutely looked. But, yeah, the hit chance would have likely been considerably higher if we had sensors. I'm fairly certain we had no sensors. Although I could have actually also looked to see if it had evasion or not, because even if you don't have enough sensors to know what the enemy's evasion is, you will still be able to see the increased difficulty to hit in the tooltip that pops up when you hover a weapon. Now, if it acts before we get a turn, which it's actually not going to, I was going to say then it's not relevant.
Waiting for orders.
Oh, it's getting a turn before we can shoot it, so it's not really relevant. Yeah. All right. So this again is one of those target of convenience versus better targeting. We have one of the vehicles in the Vanguard is running away. So this is a thing that can happen with the AI. If they get I believe it is a guts roll, but if they get a bad guts roll to certain flags that can happen, they will start fleeing. And they will return fire still, but they will largely focus on getting away from your forces. We destroyed a quarter of the Vanguard, which included one of the 2 mechs. And the vehicle pilot in the Drillson is essentially just noping out because we destroyed the Razorback. Which means, A, we don't really have to worry about him for the foreseeable future. And B, if we want the bonus payout for destroying the Vanguard, we're going to have to send somebody way over there to deal with him. Now, we do still have reinforcements dropping soon. And we do need to get back toward the base because it's unlikely that the reinforcements will all drop on this particular little section of the battlefield. So in the interest of doing that, I am going to take the Locust as my target with the Bushwhacker as I start moving it back towards the base. Yeah. This is a good point to talk about friendly fire. So, I have friendly fire default, which is all, meaning that anyone can hit anyone with friendly fire. Now, this VTOL, this friendly VTOL that we have, is flying. Which means that even though we're shooting past the hex it's occupying, we're not going to hit it. Because friendly fire, whenever you're firing any weapon at all, the projectiles that you're firing travel from the center of your mech. I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter whether it's an arm-mounted weapon or a torso-mounted weapon. I'm fairly certain they all fire from the center of your mech model. And they fire in the direction of the enemy target. Lasers and autocannons fire a direct line. It is just a single ray from your model towards the enemy model. And if you miss, that line can go pretty wide in any direction. Now, one direction that it's less likely to go is up, which means if you have an ally or one of your friendly units, one of your units, flying high above the path of your projectiles, you are considerably less likely to hit them with friendly fire than you are if the vehicle or mech is on the ground along the path. And yes, the vehicle's hex that it's occupying is 2 hexes away from the path that we're shooting along, but it can still be hit. The closer to your friendly mech that a unit is, the less likely they are to be hit by friendly fire. So, even though this hummingbird is slightly in front of our bushwhacker towards the enemy we're firing at, even if it wasn't flying, there would be an incredibly low chance, a very, very low chance that it would ever get hit by any of our stray shots. Because, again, the rays, no matter how wildly you miss, all originate, all the targeting lines originate from the center of your mech or vehicle. So even if a friendly is slightly in front of and to the side of you, the odds of the miss being so wide that it more or less goes sideways is not a consideration that you ever really need to think about. Now, if it was 1 or 2 hexes further forward, then yes, absolutely, that would be at a place where it could, if it wasn't flying, where it could get hit by a stray shot if we miss pretty wildly. Also, the rolls, the hit chance rolls, the closer to hitting the hit chance is, whenever you miss, if you roll with a 80% chance to hit, your misses aren't going to go as wide as if you were rolling with a 0.9% chance to hit, which is the lowest possible hit chance in the game. So if you're firing with a 0.9% chance to hit, those shots are more likely to go all over the place than if you're firing with a 80+% chance to hit, in which case the misses will all likely be directly around or straight behind the mech you're shooting at. Worth noting, as far as I know, the stray shots that you have whenever you're firing a weapon can go, regardless of where you're targeting, the stray shots, the misses can go to the max range of the weapon. So even if we were engaging this Locust over here, and say the buildings that we were trying to defend were pretty much, across the map at the max range of the large laser or the LRMs, or the LBX, way, way past the target we're shooting at, there would still be a chance that our shot would go wide and travel the max range of the weapon to impact and cause a stray shot, cause a friendly fire incident. Now, just like how far from the mech you're targeting the shot goes, how far past the mech you're targeting is also a function based on the hit chance of the shot you're taking. So again, if you've got an 80+% hit chance, stray shots are much less likely to go well beyond your target. There is still a chance, though. So that is everything immediately relevant about friendly fire. There's more considerations that we will discuss once it's actually a thing we're considering, rather than just a footnote of a thing that this situation makes me think of. So, with that all out of the way, we are going to make the last decision before firing on the Locust, and we're going to swap the LB-10 cluster, or the LB-10 ammo from cluster to slug. The main reason why is if the cluster, separating into 10 projectiles, hits anything, there's no guarantee it's going to do much, aside from maybe destroying the Locust side torso, possibly getting a crit on the engine, something like that. However, if we hit with the slug, even if we hit the fresh arm on the side that has like negligible damage, 60 damage is going to completely destroy the arm and completely destroy, well, almost completely destroy the side torso. If we hit leg, it will completely destroy the leg and the Locust will fall to the ground. So while the hit chance is lower, and the fact that we're firing a single projectile versus 10 projectiles means the odds of doing some damage is lower by a large margin, the impact that a single hit with the slug will cause is actually more significant than multiple hits with the cluster for this particular shot. And this is one of the benefits of having multiple ammunition types, is you can choose the one that suits the particular shot better. Also, worth noting is if you look at the range increments, the range increase from the slug compared to the range of the cluster means that at this range of 8, 9, 10 hexes, something like that, the cluster shot is actually going to be in medium range, whereas the slug might, again based on rounding and based on how close my ballpark was, we might be within short range, so we would have an extra bonus to hit. Which actually I'm looking I'm looking at the pop-up there. No, we're outside of short range. Otherwise we would have a +2 there. Unless they changed it and now short range is only +1. No, I think they changed it. I think short range is now +1 accuracy. Because the cluster shot itself gives +1 accuracy. And we have weapon accuracy -1 right there. But if we switch to the slug, which does not get the +1 accuracy, and we hover over the LB-10, we still have the weapon accuracy -1. And weapon accuracy is also what it falls under whenever you have a bonus within short range or a penalty past medium range. So that's interesting. But yeah, we are still losing the 1 evasion ignore from the cluster shot, which is still bringing our cluster 36% down to the slug 29.8%. However, once more, the chance to land the slug shot and destroy a lot compared to landing a couple of the cluster shots, or a couple of the cluster projectiles and doing something, the trade-off is absolutely worth it in this particular situation. So, with that all said and done,
Got it.
we're gonna fire. And I don't know if it was missiles plus laser or if it was autocannon, but we did indeed take off the leg, which then popped up all of that. I really wish I could pause the pop-ups, but so I'm gonna try to go over what all just happened there, and then I can address that possibly, maybe. But we destroyed the side torso. So let's start with that. When the side torso of a mech is destroyed, the Mechwarrior takes 1 injury. So we destroyed side torso, the Mechwarrior took 1 injury. We also destroyed the leg. When you destroy the leg of a mech, the mech falls to the ground. This means that it has lost all evasion, obviously, because it's lying on the ground. It means that you can then make called shots on different locations of it when you're shooting at it. And it also means that the pilot takes another injury. Now, the injury from the side torso destruction and the injury from falling down, just like an injury from getting a projectile strike to the head, are not guaranteed. They are opposed by a guts roll, a guts check, to see if the Mechwarrior is injured. So one of the pop-ups that we saw was health remaining 1 out of 3. What that means is if we do 1 more damage to this Mechwarrior, he will be dead. Now, it's worth noting, again, since the injuries that a Mechwarrior takes can be resisted with a guts check succeeding. If you take an injury, regardless of whether you successfully prevent it from actually costing you 1 health or not, it does add to another value called consciousness threshold. If you resist every injury, but you take enough potential injuries, your mech will still drop and be out of the fight, and your Mechwarrior will lose consciousness from being shooken up so much, even if they resisted every single injury. So even if the Mechwarrior has insanely high guts and has components, gear that prevents injuries, you can still reliably take mechs out of the fight and potentially get really good salvage out of them by taking down the meat inside of the machine. So if you can cause injuries reliably, for example, destroying the other side torso of the Locust, then you can take a mech out of the fight and leave parts intact. So essentially, whenever we shoot at this Locust, regardless of whether we destroy center or destroy side torso, the mech will still go down because the Mechwarrior, I believe, will have only the 3 consciousness thresholds. So whether or not they resist the injury, their mech will, or they will still lose consciousness. If we destroy center torso, obviously the mech's out of the fight because we destroyed center torso. There's no engine left, it is gone. If we destroy the other leg, the mech still is gone, because if you destroy both legs of a mech, the mech is out of the fight, the mech is done. Now, while we're on the topic of different ways to destroy mechs, the way that you determine how many bits of salvage are left. On that topic, whenever ammunition explodes, just having an ammo explosion, even if you have case, still causes a potential injury to the Mechwarrior. So if you cause an ammo explosion and it's cased with case 2 and it only does 5 damage, the Mechwarrior will still take an injury or lose 1 consciousness threshold because they resisted the injury. Alright, well, that's been your episode of Roguetech for the day. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, have a good one.